This is KingdomAce. He's beaten every title in the Zelda series, but I want to beat him in a 1v1. You might be thinking, Henke, this is a single player game, how does a 1v1 even work? So here's what we decided on. To score a point, you have to kill an enemy with a Zonai device, but the enemy and device have to be different each time. We have 2 hours to score the most points starting right now. There's many strategies to approach this challenge, and we started with very different ones. I decided to start with Zonai devices that were hard to use and match them to enemies that are easy to kill. There are several ways to kill with each device, but the most straightforward way I found was to drop it on top of the enemy with Ultra Hand. This works great on enemies that have low health, like the constructs on Great Sky Island, although I would soon realize that this doesn't work for every situation. Meanwhile, KingdomAce went to a spot that has a lot of Gibdos. Since Gibdos can only be killed in certain ways, it makes sense to deal with them first and leave your options open for later. He tried to use the frost emitter for this one, but this didn't go as smoothly as he hoped.
Dude, these things last forever.
Right before I finished off this construct, it ended up damaging the group of choo-choos nearby. This was unfortunate because the enemy can only be damaged by the Zonai device or fall damage for it to count. So after getting my first point on the board, I had to look elsewhere. It didn't take me long to find a couple of keys, which I decided to bust out the mirror for. I thought the keys might die when exposed to light from the mirror, but they just fell on the ground instead, so I went back to my original strategy and just dropped the mirror. KingdomAce finally finished off his Gibdo, opting for the shock emitter instead of the frost emitter. He also found a camp of bokoblins nearby and used the beam emitter to take care of them, quickly tying us up at 2-2. As I continued to stroll around Great Sky Island, I witnessed this bird absolutely bulldozing over a construct, and I realized since it's capable of dealing damage, it would qualify for the other category on the list of enemies we can kill. However, it was incredibly hard to keep up with when it started running away from me, and my choice of Zonai device was not the best. I switched to the cart, which had a wider surface area, but that also didn't go as planned. Okay, that did not deal damage like I thought it would. I'm officially doing something else. While I was struggling, KingdomAce gained a lot of momentum. He quickly adopted some of the strategies I started with, like going up to Great Sky Island to kill a construct, although incinerating it with a flame emitter might have been overkill. He went up to the surface and seemed to know exactly where to find an Aracuda. These can usually be found at high altitudes, but there are times like this where it will spawn close to the ground. He waited for it to fly towards him, then used the frost emitter. He's taken the lead now, but it's important to note that he's used all 4 emitters to take down the more difficult enemies. Time will tell whether starting with difficult enemies or difficult devices was the correct move. He fast traveled to a nearby cave to find the keys, and used another one of my strategies and put it in the hydraulic press.
That counted, dude. Let's go. I don't care.
I didn't tell him about any of my plans, so he just happened to discover these same strategies on his own. This sequence gave him a 3-point lead at 2-5, so I already have my work cut out for me. I also traveled down to the surface and found a choo-choo right next to a beehive. After dispatching these with a stabilizer and cart respectively, I quickly brought myself within 1 point. This is as far as my strategy of dropping the devices can take me, since all the remaining enemies have more health or are more difficult to damage. Both me and KingdomAce were about to realize this. I went to this group of trees in search of an Evermean, but found something else instead. Oh, that's a great find. While KingdomAce went back up to the cave and found some Stalkoblins.
Oh, this is a good find.
We both whipped out our Zonai devices and started dropping them, but our targets were moving around too quickly for this to work. Even when we did manage to land a hit, I realized the Yiga foot soldier had more health than I expected and might be able to kill me first. Dude, I might die to this enemy if I'm not careful. While KingdomAce realized that Stalkoblins will regenerate until you beat the whole group. I got the foot soldier to about half health until it decided to run away. Although I lost an opportunity to kill a rare enemy, I did find the Evermean I was originally looking for. I realized that trees could only be damaged if they're cut by sharp weapons or by starting a forest fire. I guess I will cause a forest fire. KingdomAce tried using a homing cart instead, which should have worked on paper. Homing carts don't deal deal a lot of damage by themselves, but Stalkoblins don't have a lot of health, making this a great match. Unfortunately, the homing cart doesn't even deal enough damage to knock the Stalkoblin off balance. I also tried the homing cart after reloading my save, and came to the same conclusion that it wouldn't deal enough damage right now. It's funny how we both tried the same strategies at the exact same time. After exhausting several options, I just blew myself up. We both resorted to an item that we wanted to save for later, the cannon. This is the most powerful Zonai device for killing enemies, but we simply couldn't afford to waste more time. So anyways, we started blasting. He fused his to his shield, while I attached mine to a construct head. This was a very eventful half hour that left us at 6-6. And now that our initial strategies stopped working, we had to get more creative. He went to the Skyview Tower at Hyrule Field, where a boss Bokoblin is guaranteed to be there. The only problem was that it's a silver enemy, the highest tier in the game.
Oh, he killed me. Crap.
He put on his Majora's Mask so the other enemies wouldn't bother him, and started building a device to take the boss into the sky and kill it with fall damage. Meanwhile, I went to a hot environment in the depths. The idea was to find a fire-based enemy and damage it with water from the hydrant, but I ended up running into a group of Horriblins on the way. These enemies are tough to deal with, especially when you can only use Zonai devices, so I decided to unload some time bombs, but the first wave wasn't enough to kill one. Since they're fast and have long-range weapons, I had trouble finding time to take out another set of bombs and detonate them. Luckily, I found just enough time to take them out, and they ended up detonating the bombs for me, and I secured the lead once again. Alright, that got one of them. KingdomAce built a complicated setup to lift the boss, but couldn't find a way to get it under the boss, so that bought me a lot of time. However, I also wasted some of that time while I kept looking for my fire-based enemy. I couldn't find one in the depths like I expected, so I went to the surface and built a bike to cover as much ground as possible. It was then that I found the mother of all fire-based enemies. Wizrobes are one of the most dangerous enemies in the game if you're not properly equipped to deal with them, but I came prepared. All I had to do was take out a frost emitter and wait for the Wizrobe to come to me, and I one-shotted it with the element it was weak to. I'm the one gaining momentum now, with a 2-point lead and some powerful devices I haven't used yet. After ditching the pack of Bokoblins, he ran into a Choo-Choo. This is an ideal candidate for the homing cart due to its low health, so we finally found a situation where that device works. I was trying to use the homing cart on a Bokoblin, but it fell over. After dropping it on top, the Bokoblin fell into the water. This was definitely caused by the homing cart, but drowning wasn't technically accounted for in the rules like fall damage, so I had to reload the save and crush the Bokoblin with something else. KingdomAce continues using his Majora's Mask to sneak up on enemies. He can simply walk up to a group of Moblins and detonate a time bomb without being attacked. That's a big contrast from my method, where I had to run around and group everyone together. He got it done, but despite tying up the scoreboard, he felt some regret about his earlier strategies.
I'm gonna really regret doing it that way. But realistically, there's just so many tough enemies, and I need to take what I can get right now when we're on a time limit.
This is him starting to realize that he's running out of devices capable of dealing heavy damage. Meanwhile, I'm still trying to figure out a way to kill this Bokoblin, and since I can't knock it off the platform, the small amount of space I have works against me instead of for me. I tried the Hoverstone first since it's big, heavy, and flat, but I lost it in the water. That was my only Hoverstone, so I decided to attach 2 sleds together and finally got it done that way. There's 1 hour left with a score of 9-8. You'll start to notice that it becomes progressively harder to score points as time goes on. KingdomAce found a location with several Octoroks, but there's 2 problems. The rock on an Octorok's head protects it from falling Zonai devices, and it buries itself if you get close. So after a while of trying to make this happen, he moves to the depths instead and finds a Yiga foot soldier right next to his spawn point. I don't know what his fixation is with attaching things to shields, but he tried this again until the enemy got bored and ran away. Meanwhile, I'm making the most of Hyrule Castle, where I expect to find many different types of enemies. I left the Lizalfos for the second hour since they're easier to find, but I soon realized they'd be harder to kill. First, I tried fusing a rocket to my shield and shield surfing, but it's way too fast for me to do something like that. I figured the best way to deal with a fast enemy was using a ranged attack like the beam emitter so they won't get close enough to kill me. When I crossed that one off, I traded arrows with another nearby Lizalfos and died again. I finally made it to a Moblin, but didn't have a plan until I scrolled through my remaining devices. Ooh, I got hit with an inspiration bomb. I realized I could use Hyrule Castle's height to my advantage. Instead of using a spring to blast an enemy high up, I could simply spring them off the side of the castle and they die to fall damage. Of course, unless I get killed by a Lizalfos again. Making sure to assassinate the Lizalfos this time, I put my plan into action. This actually worked on the first attempt, but I mistook the one that fell for another Moblin that was sleeping there. Oh my god, that got saved. So I did it again, and flew down to confirm that there was ground below it instead of water. That makes the score 11-8. Now we began to have opposite problems. I journeyed all over the surface, the depths, and even the Sky Islands, but couldn't find a single enemy I had yet to kill. KingdomAce ran into all sorts of enemies, but lacked ways to consistently kill them. He even built a major operation to take this Lizalfos into the air, just for it to burn to death when he lit the balloon.
Well, it doesn't matter now because I accidentally killed it some other way.
Aside from a Gibdo that I killed using my last emitter device, we were at a stalemate until there were 30 minutes left. Then, KingdomAce discovered an insane loophole in the rules. This loophole involves fusing Zonai devices to arrows, which I didn't think was possible until hearing it from him.
Could I attach a sled to an arrow?
How the f do you attach a sled to an arrow?
I just checked to see if it works, and it does let you do it.
If we use this technique, it would make any enemy in the game killable with any device. We decided to compromise and allow KingdomAce to use this technique one time since he discovered it, then close the loophole. He went back to the Octorok from before and used it there. That's one of 4 points he needs to make a comeback. He figured the next best bet was to look for an enemy he could easily kill with a weak Zonai device, specifically the little frogs. Lucky for him, I've been focusing on the time-consuming task of killing a boss bokoblin with a wing. First I tried attaching fans but couldn't get the wing airborne. After a while, I came up with a better plan, using the size of the wing to push the boss off a cliff. After succeeding to push it off, I realized it was saved by another cliff. There was a third cliff below that one, and then my internet cut out. No way, my internet. Now would be a golden opportunity for KingdomAce to continue his comeback. The funny thing about little froxes is that we stumble across them all the time, but they're really hard to find when you actually seek them out. He spent that whole time looking, but couldn't find a single one. With my internet back on, I used the final minutes of the challenge to join KingdomAce in his search for froxes. I told him about a place called the Wrist Mine, where literally hundreds of them spawn. Looking back on the way I killed the frogs here, Zoanite shields would have been a game changer in this challenge. It turned a wheel that's normally hard to kill with into a meat grinder that shreds anything it touches. It's actually kind of effective. KingdomAce couldn't make it to the mine before time ran out, so the final score was 13-9. Though I did find an interesting quote when I looked through his footage.
Dude, literally this challenge would have been so different if I was being smarter earlier on. I might have to be a round 2 to this.
Make sure to subscribe in case we end up doing a rematch, and I'll see you guys next time.